Chapter 3. First Kill Reward Card. The first miracle card. Carefully examining, Gordon noticed that there were a total of 6 card slots on this card album. But at the moment, these slots were all empty, and he didn't know what their purpose was. As he focused his attention on the card album, it suddenly trembled, and then a virtual screen appeared before his eyes. Name: Gordon. Race: Human/Card Master. Age: 21. Level: 0, 2/10. Owned card: 0/6. Miracle cards: none. Card points: none. This is my character panel? Gordon was surprised at first, but then his surprise was replaced by confusion. He remembered that the mechanical voice had just hinted that he had already gained 10 card points and seemed to have obtained some kind of miracle card, but now there was nothing on his character panel. When he stepped over to the monster's corpse, everything became clear to him. The monster's skin was a grayish-green color, and its surface seemed to be covered with some unknown viscous substance, making it hard to identify what kind of creature it was. Floating above the monster's corpse were 2 grayish light clusters, and through the outer halo, Gordon could clearly see that each light cluster contained a card. Dropped. Gordon's mind flashed with scenes from countless games where monsters dropped treasures. Shaking his head slightly, he suppressed these messy thoughts and carefully picked up the 2 cards. He didn't rush to look at them. Instead, he retrieved all the arrows from the ground where the unknown monster lay, dragged the corpse to a corner of the hallway, and cleaned up the sticky liquid on the ground to avoid any interference with future actions. In his rented room, with a click. At the same time, the 2 cards in his pocket were quickly taken out. Card points card, 10 points. Note: this card does not occupy a card slot and will disappear after use. After reading the card in his left hand, Gordon raised an eyebrow, instinctively associating it with the card album in his mind. With a thought, the card points card in his left hand disappeared. Looking at his character panel again, the card points had indeed increased to 10. So it's controlled by mental focus. Gordon realized the method of using the cards. He then looked at the other card in his hand. This card was the key. First kill bonus card. Please choose one of the following 3 miracle cards as your first kill. Alien reward. You have 20 seconds to choose. If the time limit is exceeded, option A will be chosen by default. I. Uncommon card Goblin Standard Wolf Fang Club. B. Uncommon card Eye of Insight. C. Uncommon card Jungle Walker. With limited time, Gordon quickly scanned the attributes of the 3 cards one by one. After a moment of contemplation, he made his decision. Selection completed. You have chosen option BE, and you have obtained the uncommon card Eye of Insight. Just as the mechanical prompt sounded in his ear, Gordon had an additional card in his hand, the Eye of Insight. As for why he chose the Eye of Insight over the other 2 options, the reason was simple. Firstly, its quality was uncommon 2 stars, rare, obviously higher than the other 2. Secondly, considering that he was currently in a modern city built of reinforced concrete, the ability of option C, Jungle Walker, which required a forest environment to be effective, would hardly be useful in the short term. As for the Wolf Fang Club card, in option AE, it was a weapon card, which was not necessary for Gordon, who already had a mechanical compound bow. Considering these factors, Gordon confidently chose the Eye of Insight. Looking at the card in his hand, Gordon's mind was racing. Each of these cards had unique abilities, almost like superpowers, which was unimaginable before the mutation. Thinking about this, Gordon instinctively thought of the various legendary abilities he had read about in novels. stirring oceans, chasing stars, forgetting longevity. Just thinking about these nearly mythical abilities being within reach made his heart burn with excitement. He wondered about the difficulty of obtaining these miracle cards. Since there were uncommon 1-star and 2-star cards, were there also uncommon 3-star or even 4-star cards? Were there cards of even higher quality than uncommon? Did the hundreds of lights that fell from the sky earlier also contain various miracle cards? Lost in thought, Gordon once again approached the window. His gaze fell on the green area beyond the road where hundreds of lights had fallen earlier. Struggling internally, he reluctantly withdrew his gaze when he saw skeletons appearing on the street. With a thought, the Eye of Insight card in his hand disappeared, and then one of the 6 blank card slots in his mind's card album was immediately occupied. Chapter 4: Dark Skeleton, Seeking Support. The moment he equipped the insightful eye, a series of faint lights flashed from Gordon's pupils and, after a few seconds, returned to calm. But when he opened his eyes again, Gordon was stunned in place. His vision, which had become somewhat blurry due to his addiction to electronic devices, suddenly became extremely clear, as if the originally turbid water had suddenly become exceptionally clear. Exaggeratedly speaking, that feeling was like being reborn at that moment, a feeling that couldn't be described in words. With great excitement, Gordon's eyes shifted. After equipping the insightful eye card, he immediately focused on the skeleton creatures on the street outside the window. Compared to the gray-green monster he had just killed, which he had identified as a goblin during the card selection, he now wanted to know more about these seemingly undead skeletons. After all, compared to the goblin, these skeleton creatures seemed much more oppressive. As he focused his gaze on one of the skeleton creatures, a series of information quickly appeared in his eyes. Name: Dark Skeleton, Common. Race: Undead. Level: 2. Weapon: Dry Bone Spear. Skill: Sweeping Strike. Characteristic: possesses a skeleton body with a relatively high immunity to physical damage and fear of attacks from holy light. Looking at the attribute panel in front of him, Gordon fell into silence. Obviously, this kind of dark skeleton was temporarily beyond his ability to deal with. After much consideration, he decided to wait until he had cleared all the residents in the building. At least he would raise his own level first. By then, he should have a much better chance of dealing with the dark skeleton. According to the information on his own attribute panel, he was still at level 0, not even reaching level 1. Based on the physical enhancement he received after awakening as an ordinary person, it was not difficult to guess that each subsequent level increase would likely enhance his body. Not to mention, reaching the same level as this dark skeleton, just advancing from level 0 to level 1. He was 80% confident he could kill it one-on-one. While lost in thought, a strong sense of hunger from his stomach brought Gordon back to reality. I just ate a big piece of bread not long ago. Why am I hungry again so soon? While puzzled, his actions were not slow. He quickly walked to the kitchen and prepared himself a box of instant noodles as a reward. And he wanted to add a sausage. Fortunately, the power in the house had not been cut off yet. Otherwise, he really didn't know how to boil water. After all, in Gordon's house, the kitchen was just for show, and things like gas stoves were never considered. Of course, Gordon was well aware that this was only temporary. With the rampage of countless monsters, a complete power outage was only a matter of time, either tonight or at the latest tomorrow. By then, it would be very difficult to have hot food. After boiling water and preparing the classic hot pepper brand instant noodles, he found a large thermos he had bought at some unknown time from a corner, filled it up, and cleaned it. He didn't know if it still worked, But just in case, right? After filling his stomach, he chose not to go out again. The light outside was already dimming, and nightfall was approaching. It wasn't wise to go out at this time. After some thought, Gordon piled up the two cabinets in the living room at the front door, neatly stacked one on top of the other, completely blocking the entire door. It could be imagined that if there were any monsters attacking from outside, it would be extremely difficult to break through. Although this was indeed a bit exaggerated in the current situation where the world had changed beyond recognition. Gordon had to be cautious because he knew that once something went wrong, it would be too late to regret it. As time passed, night fell, and he didn't even dare to turn on the lights. In the darkness, the roars of various monsters continued, as if a deep abyss was slowly opening, ready to devour anyone who fell in. In front of the residential building across the street, someone was screaming. Apparently, that person's nerves were a bit dull. In such a situation of sudden change outside, he still dared to turn on the lights openly at night. Gordon noticed that as soon as the lights came on in his room, it was as if the various monsters on the street below had received a signal. They all rushed into the residential building opposite at the same time, and then came the scene before him. Regarding this, Gordon silently praised the residents of his building. At least the bad teammates were not among these people. Otherwise, if too many monsters rushed in, his hunting plan for tomorrow would be quite unpredictable. After staying at the window for a while, everything suddenly went black, and all the lights around him dimmed in that moment. Without feeling any surprise, Gordon knew that the whole city had experienced a power outage. Sitting back on the sofa in the living room, his mechanical compound bow and quiver of arrows were placed beside him, ensuring that he could grab them immediately in case of an emergency. Then he reopened his personal attribute panel to check it again. That's how the night passed, without incident. The next morning, Gordon woke up early. Although there had been no danger last night, he was awakened once during the night. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, there was suddenly a loud banging on the door next door. It's not clear if it was just unlucky or if the resident made noise in their sleep, but shortly after attracting the monsters to attack the door, Gordon heard the sound of the door being broken and horrifying screams. Regarding this, Gordon's expression did not change much. He had nothing to say about the neighbor's situation. When he explored the surroundings yesterday, he had first checked the same floor and naturally discovered another lucky person besides himself. At that time, he kindly invited the person to move in with him and live together, making it clear that it would be safer this way, as more people meant more strength. However, what he got was an outright refusal from the other party, who didn't even open the door during the entire exchange. Gordon could understand this. In the current situation of the world changing, with the collapse of order and the absence of law, it was normal to be wary of strangers. But at the same time, if one couldn't trust others, then when danger came, one should be prepared to be isolated and helpless, unable to blame others if they were killed by monsters. After hastily eating something, checking his mechanical bow several times, and finally taking a large fruit knife and strapping it to his waist, just in case, Gordon was ready. After ensuring that he had made all the preparations, Gordon moved away the cabinet at the door and stepped out again. His plan for today was simple: ensure his own safety and kill as many monsters as possible, while also collecting supplies. Of course, the most important thing was to see if he could get another new miracle card. In this world of change, one's own strength was ultimately the truth. This is it for today. Like and subscribe. See you next video.